Hey folks, this is JR with DIY Prepper. Welcome to the channel. A couple weeks ago, a lot of us woke up and realized that our cell phones were not working. And while a lot of people freaked out over that, the fact of the matter is that it could have been a whole lot worse. The outages only lasted for around 12 hours or less, and if you were near your home or a business, you could use Wi-Fi to send messages or do video calls. However, it was a good reminder of how fragile our communication systems are and how dependent we've become on them. So today we're going to talk about ways that preppers can expand their emergency communication plans so that we'll be able to stay in contact with loved ones and also get valuable information during different kinds of disasters. And the most basic part of an emergency communications plan is doing whatever you can to keep your cell phone running for as long as possible. Now, given I know that it's not going to do you much good if networks are down like they were a couple weeks ago, but it's still a valuable tool for everyday emergencies, like if your car breaks down or different kinds of weather events. Probably the most cost-effective way to do this is to invest in one or more USB power banks. The cost of these has dropped significantly over the past couple of years. I have a couple of these that I keep in my bag for backup power while I'm traveling, and I'm even using one right now to power my camera. Having one of these and a cable in your EDC bag or purse could double or even triple how long you can keep your phone running, depending on your phone's battery capacity. Then for situations that last more than a couple of days, you can pair a USB battery bank with a set of portable solar panels and use them as a miniature solar generator. A setup like that's good for cell phones and other USB rechargeable devices like flashlights. I also like to keep a charging cable in my truck at all times. That allows me to use the navigation apps on my phone with my truck, but it also comes in handy if my battery's getting a little low. I just know from my experience that if something goes down and I'm away from home, then there's a very good chance that my truck is nearby, so it just makes sense to be able to do that. And while keeping your cell phone charged up is important, it's also important to understand their limitations, and most of those limitations involve their ground-based infrastructure. To make a call, your cell phone has to connect to a cell tower, which will then connect to a satellite. That satellite will then connect to a tower close to whoever you're calling, and if any of those links are broken, then you can't communicate. Severe weather can damage cell towers on the ground, and widespread power outages can cause them to go offline if they last long enough. And since there's so many different links in that system, that means that there's several different points of failure. Those could be caused by simple glitches within the system and also cyber attacks. And then even though coverage has gotten a lot better in the past couple of decades, if you're somewhere really remote, then you may not have reception since there aren't any towers nearby. And one really good backup option for a traditional cell phone is a satellite phone. Since they communicate directly with satellites in orbit, they cut out the most vulnerable part of the cellular communications infrastructure, which is the towers. As long as we still have satellites and you can see the sky, then you can make a call. Here I have a phone made by Iridium, and they make a lot of the sat phones used by the US military. SatellitePhoneStore.com sent this for us to take a look at today, and I'd like to thank them for doing that and for sponsoring this video. Satellite phones, as the name suggests, are actual phones. So unlike something like a ham radio that requires specialized knowledge to operate effectively, if you can use a cell phone, then you can use a sat phone. All you need to do is turn the phone on, extend the antenna, wait for a signal, and then make your call. You can also use them anywhere in the world, including the middle of the ocean. They're commonly used by overseas military personnel, and they've also been used after major natural disasters to help people in remote areas of less developed nations. A while back, my wife and I were watching a documentary over an earthquake in Nepal, and it was really bad. There was this little remote village that was completely flattened by landslides, and they couldn't communicate with the outside to get help, except for a couple of tourists who had a satellite phone. They were able to use that to call helicopters in. The locals who were injured were able to get medical help, and then the tourists were able to get evacuated. But you don't have to be experiencing something that horrific to get use out of a satellite phone. My family and I are going to be taking a road trip pretty soon, and it's going to be a big one. We're going to be going through some pretty remote areas, And I'm going to feel better having this with us just in case we go through an area that doesn't get good cell reception. We'll at least be able to call for help if we break down or anything else happens. The particular phone that I have here is an Iridium 9555. You can use it to make calls to cell phones, landlines, and you can also use it to send text messages. It came with everything that you'd need to use it, like chargers, including international ones, a carrying case, and a belt clip. And if you think you might want to pick up a satellite phone, then satellitephonestore.com is an excellent place to do that. They've been in business since 2006. They sell a lot of different satellite phones. They have a lot of different plans to choose from with those, so you can get a phone and a plan from them. They also sell other things like what you need to set up internet hotspots, Faraday bags to protect your equipment, and you can find links to them in the description below. And another thing that you need to keep in mind when it comes to emergency communications is backup energy. A moment ago I talked about how to put together a small solar generator using a USB battery bank and a set of portable solar panels, but it's important to understand that those are limited in their capability. While they work well for keeping small USB devices charged, you're going to have a limited battery capacity to work with, and they won't work with other devices that may require a traditional AC power source. So if you're concerned about a long-term survival situation, one of the best energy sources is a good quality solar generator. These are available in different sizes for different budgets, and if you're mainly concerned about keeping your comms up and running, then even a small power station and set of panels will do the job just fine. Large ones can keep your comms and other essential electronics running and also power larger appliances like box freezers. I've done several reviews of EcoFlow solar generators, and in my experience, their devices perform at the level that they advertise and in some cases surpass it. SatellitePhoneStore.com, in addition to selling satellite phones, also sells EcoFlow solar generators, so if you want to pick one of those up, then be sure to check them out as well. The next communication method is one that every prepper should have, and that's an emergency radio. Radio in general is a lot more resilient than modern communication methods, making it an excellent backup. And even though you can't transmit with them, having an emergency radio will allow you to get important weather updates and then also other communications from local and even federal authorities. Now, there's a lot of these on the market, but most of them work the same way and have similar features. The Midland ER310 that I have can pick up AM, FM, and NOAA weather frequencies. So that means you'll be able to get the information that you need during weather events and also most power outages. Really, the only time that an emergency radio may not be useful would be after an EMP. But even with that, if you keep it protected, then there's a good chance that eventually broadcasts may start again, just because radio, it doesn't require a lot of like supporting infrastructure, and it's also an older technology, meaning it'll be easier to get up and running again. Another nice thing about radios like these is they tend to be rechargeable and have multiple ways to keep them powered. This one can be charged via a USB cord that you can hook up to a charging brick, laptop, or solar generator, and it can also be recharged using its integrated solar panel or hand crank. If its rechargeable battery stops working, then you can keep it running with some AA batteries. Most emergency radios can also be used to charge cell phones and other USB devices, although I will say that my Midland ER310 has been a little bit disappointing in that regard, because when you're charging other devices, it seems like its battery drains much faster than it should. Another emergency communication method that preppers should consider is FRS and GMRS radios. FRS radios are basically walkie-talkies that you can pick up at pretty much any big box or sporting goods store. They're nice since they're relatively inexpensive and they don't require any special licensing to operate, but the downside to them is that they have limited power and limited range. So really, you're only going to be able to communicate with members of your family or group on your own property, or maybe your neighbors if they aren't too far away. GMRS radios are the next step up in power. While FRS radios are limited to just 2 watts, GMRS radios can transmit up to 50 watts if it's a mobile unit or base station. With a GMRS radio, you can also upgrade the antenna, which can make a very big difference, especially on mobile units and base stations. GMRS radios can also transmit on the FRS frequency, so in all reality you may just want to forego FRS radios and stick to GMRS versions. GMRS radios can also use repeaters, which can greatly increase the distance that you can communicate. The only downside to GMRS is that you need a license to use those radios while society is up and running. The license, though, is pretty inexpensive and it lasts for 10 years. The hardest part of the whole process is just figuring out the stupid website that you have to go through. But your license is also good for you and your entire family, including people outside of your household. So that means that under my license, I can communicate, my wife can communicate, and then also my parents and brother who live a couple of miles away can use that same license as well. Then the next level up when it comes to radio comms is ham radio. You can get these in small handheld units like this for short-range communication or do a large mobile or base camp setup. Unlike other kinds of radio, there's no wattage limits, so if you have a base station, as long as you have the right equipment and you have a way to power it, you could communicate over a significant distance. Now, you will need a license to transmit with a ham radio while society is up and running, but that licensing process, it's a good way to learn the ins and outs of ham radio because it is a little bit more complicated than other communication methods. Now, if you have no plan on transmitting, then you don't need a license to listen. You can do that as much as you want to. But one thing I'd recommend doing is looking up your local ham radio club's website and finding out what frequency their repeater's on. This will give you the best chance of picking up transmissions in your area. And also, if you're in a bind, it'll give you a better chance of your transmissions reaching somebody. There are exceptions to the licensing rule that if there is an emergency, then you can use a ham radio to call for help. Small ham radios like this one can also pick up NOAA weather frequencies along with local FM radio stations. So for $25, I think that it's a very high value prep. They're also small enough that you can remove the antenna and protect it in a Faraday bag. Because remember, a lot of ham operators are also preppers, so it makes sense that many of those people would have at least some equipment set back and protected in case something really, really bad happens. So there's a good chance that even if there is an EMP or something like that, there'll probably still be people transmitting and listening. But if you're mainly concerned with getting information from the outside world during a disaster and don't really care about transmitting, then shortwave radio is a good option. Now, normally this is the part where I'd have some nice B-roll showing the shortwave radio that I picked up for me and my family, but the bottom line is I don't have money for one right now because I've spent quite a bit on a project that I have coming up for you guys. What in the world is that? Huh. Sounds like the neighbor's having fun down the road. But anyway, a good shortwave radio should be able to pick up pretty much anything. They can pick up AM, FM, NOAA weather frequencies. They can also pick up aircraft bands, the frequencies used by ships, international broadcasts, and some of them can pick up ham frequencies as well. Of course, there's a lot of models out there, so be sure to get one that'll pick up everything that you want it to be able to. But if you want to learn more about radios for disaster communication, then click here. Or if you want to see kinds of technology that you'd want to have after a collapse, then click here. Once again, I'd like to thank SatellitePhoneStore.com for sponsoring us today. Thank y'all for stopping by. Y'all have a good one.